My name is Dr. Christopher Grills. I am the Director of Music here at First Parish, and I am here to talk about the origins of Yankee Doodle. When I was in 5th grade, I was utterly obsessed with the American Revolution, thanks entirely to a wonderful animated 40-episode show on PBS called Liberty's Kids, starring Walter Cronkite as Benjamin Franklin and many other famous actors. The show focused on the lives of 3 children working as journalists and reporters for Franklin's Pennsylvania Gazette, and I, being the 11-year-old queer autistic child I was hopelessly in love with the 14-year-old James. I drew his picture while daydreaming in class, although I couldn't really draw that well, so I just traced the picture. And my obsession with 18th century history followed me the rest of my life, to the extent that in 6th grade I won a $1,000 prize for a play that I wrote and performed about Thomas Jefferson and his role in the exploration and exchange of Louisiana Territory. If that wasn't enough, I decided to earn a master's and a doctorate, specifically in musical instruments from the 17th and 18th century. Now is a literal delight to live in Massachusetts, where so many of the important events of the Revolution took place. If I had more time in my schedule, I would love to be able to visit the Massachusetts Historical Society, as well as the sites of all the battles and meetings. There was a little blurb at the end of each Liberty Kids episode that my father used to remind me whenever I complained to him that I was born in the wrong century. It starts with a girl saying, "You don't have to live in revolutionary times to record history. There's history all around you." And then the boy says, "Be a reporter and record the voices of today so that they become the history of tomorrow." I often wondered how I would have felt and acted and worked if I lived in the late colonial period. I assume I would have had some sort of musical employment, perhaps as a performer and teacher of instruments like I am today. I personally have very little tolerance for injustice, so I assumed I would have been a patriot rather than a Tory or loyalist, though I guess I can't say for certain. And I would have to think about how the roles of musician and patriot would interact and coalesce. And the truth came to me in one simple idea: music as resistance. Music has been used by many individual musicians and community as a form of resistance to tyrannical and oppressive leadership. The most well-known and enduring song of resistance from revolutionary times is Yankee Doodle, which we all know. Please sing it with me. Yankee Doodle went to town, riding on a pony, stuck a feather in his cap and called it macaroni. Yankee Doodle, keep it up, Yankee Doodle dandy. Mind the music and the step, and with the girls be handy. Hey. Now, who wants to sing the other 15 verses with me? Anyone? No? I'm kidding. On Music Sunday, I wouldn't subject you to that torture. I will, however, do what I've enjoyed doing since I was a small autistic child: lecture you about my special interests. But don't worry, it'll be over soon, and then you can log away the local history of Yankee Doodle somewhere in your brain and then never access it again. So, what you might know about this song is it did not originate as a patriotic anthem. On the contrary, it was sung by British soldiers during the French and Indian War to mock and disparage the colonists they fought alongside. It is written at Fort Craylow at around 1755 by British Army Surgeon Richard Shuckburgh, while campaigning in Rensselaer, New York. The first surviving lyrics were published in 1758 and are as follows: "Brother Ephraim sold his cow and bought him a commission. Then he went to Canada to fight for the nation. But when Ephraim came home, he proved an arrant coward. He wouldn't fight the Frenchmen there for fear of being devoured." On the sheet music on which this is printed, there's a note that says, "The words to be sung through the nose in the West Country drawl and dialect." And so even you can see even from the beginning there was an intent to belittle and hurt behind the music. Even the lyrics we know today were intended to hurt. The term Yankee or Yank is self-explanatory, as it is still used to refer to people or objects from the United States by other countries. Doodle comes from the Low German D-U-D-E-L, doodle, which means to play music badly, and doodle, and doodle, which is also German for a fool or simpleton. It is also important to understand that macaroni here does not refer to the noodle, but instead to a type of fashion and wig popular in the 1770s and often associated with pretentious, disingenuous people who were trying to appear of higher class than they actually were. So the real implication of the term Yankee Doodle Dandy, at least how it circulated in British conversation, was unsophisticated misappropriation of upper-class fashion. as though simply sticking a feather in one's cap would transform the wearer into a noble. I can just imagine a British noble saying, "Oh, look at that cute little collarist. He thinks he's so fancy with his cute little feather. But we know he will never compare to our British aristocracy." But that wasn't where the derision and hatred stopped. In nearby Billerica, which has been officially known since 1999 as America's Yankee Doodle town, there was a man named Thomas Ditson who in March 1775 attempted to buy a Brown Bess musket from a British soldier in Boston. The soldiers, who spotted the transaction as it was occurring, tarred and feathered Ditson in order to prevent any such illegal purchases from happening in the future. Those who were there recorded how the soldiers altered the words of the Yankee Doodle to incite violence. Yankee Doodle came to town for to buy a firelock. We will tar and feather him, and so we will John Hancock. So, the good news is, Ditson survived the tar and feathering and eventually managed to secure a musket and fought at the battles of Lexington and Concord. A major Boston newspaper reported immediately after the battles of Lexington and Concord, "Upon their return to Boston, pursued by the Minutemen, one Briton asked his brother officer how he liked the tune now of Yankee Doodle, and he said, 'Dang them, they made us dance until we were tired,' since which Yankee Doodle sounds less sweet to their ears." By this time, Americans were already reclaiming the song as one of defiance in the face of oppression. Soon after, when the Americans proclaimed their independence and founded their Continental Army, Harvard sophomore Thomas Bangs, who was also a Minuteman, wrote the 15 following verses to Yankee Doodle, which focus on early American life as a soldier, including verses about General Washington, and even one about the women at home during the war. By 1781, the song had been fully shed of its unkind British origins and was considered exclusively a song of American national pride. Over the course of the past few years, but especially past the 6 weeks, I can't help but feel many parallels to the plight of the American colonists. It is difficult for me to talk about specifics of our current governmental situation publicly without me losing my composure, so I'll leave it at that. Hearing patriotic tunes played today now gives me a very, very different feeling than how I felt as an innocent 11 or 12-year-old. But it can be helpful for us to remember that the use of music as resistance is not an exclusively white American concept. We have a wealth of exceptionally beautiful Negro spiritual repertoire reflecting the horrifically painful experiences of Black American slaves. At some point in the past couple of years, the senior choir at this church sang a song called Inscription of Hope, which was based on a writing found in the basement of a Jew who was hiding from the Nazis. And this is why we cannot allow the events of today to take away our freedom and a love for life and our congregation of art together. The Soul Matters theme for March 2025 is that of trust, and that is why I picked the Stephen Foster song, Some Folks, for our anthem today. Just as the song says, there's no need for us to toil and save and buy ourselves a grave this early in the fight. That's not me nor you. And I know that because I know this community. What I like to read from Stephen Foster's Some Folks is not to downplay the grief and suffering of the world, but to show that ultimately we have power in our actions, our finances, and our art. And this congregation is one that uses all of these things for the betterment of their community and the world at large. And if I might be vulnerable here, I consider being a staff member of this church to be one of the strongest defenses for myself and my fiancée Sean in our lives today. As two queer disabled people who rely on government services like Medicaid and Social Security for our livelihood, the country is scary for us right now. And sometimes when you're scared, the only thing that we can do is trust. I trust in this community to protect us. And I trust that the songs of resistance that are composed and sung today will play a role in toppling the oppression and saving us all, just like Yankee Doodle. Thank you.